All Century 21 real estate offices are independently owned and operated.
Hi, I'm Jackie Ruddy, broker of Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate. Welcome to the Real Estate Roundtable on 94.3 FM The Talker. I'm here with Pat Savani, my husband, fellow realtor.
Good morning, Jackie. How are you today?
Wonderful. How are you?
Very good.
All right. We have with us, for the first time ever, and I'm so excited about this, Kyle Thomas, local real estate investor. Hello.
Hi, Jackie.
Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We're here every Saturday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 11:30 a.m. where we talk real estate. We have a full-time real estate office with many exceptional realtors. We have been listing, selling, and appraising real estate for 50 years.
During the week, feel free to email us with any questions you have at questions@jruddy.com. That's questions@jruddy.com, or you can give us a call at 570-344-6724. And when you're at jruddy.com, click on the webcam tab because we have a camera on the roof and it gives a live picture of Dunmore Corners. And I want to thank everybody that listens because, I don't know, it seems that a lot of people are approaching us and say, oh, we listen to you on the radio. So I want to thank everybody who listens every week.
Lots of people
Yeah,
do.
they do. The FedEx guy, he says, oh, I listen to you guys on the radio. I said, really?
Yeah, he dropped off a package last
Yeah.
week. And then I just received a call. I always receive calls from people wondering what they need to do if they're going to sell a home. But this person wanted to know a little bit more than that. So we had an in-depth conversation, and he called me because of the radio show.
Yeah,
so that was
good.
nice. Check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Pinterest. And view our listings, search the MLS listings, and listen to archive radio shows by going to mobilefriendlyjruddy.com. That's JRUDDY.com. Kyle Thomas, local real estate investor. You've watched, you studied the market for many years. Give me the lowdown about you and what you did before investing and why you chose to go into it full throttle.
A lot of good questions there, Jackie. So I was started in the Marine Corps when I was got out of high school. And after that, I went back to college. And I think getting out of the military was probably the start, whether I realized it or not, of why I was going to become a real estate investor. So I had an injury, so I was kind of on the fence if I was going to stay in or not. I really liked it and things were going pretty well, but I didn't like the idea that, I was kind of under the thumb. So thinking that I was going to be sort of told what to do for 20 years was a little bit difficult, even if I kind of did like a lot of the aspects of what was going on in the military. So,
Are you married?
yeah, not at the time though. So at the time I was single and I could just kind of do anything that I wanted, if you will. So
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to point out you're under the thumb.
Yeah.
You'll always be under the thumb of somebody.
Yeah.
In a subtle way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So while that was going on, though, I was kind of on the fence if I was going to stay in or not. I saw pros and cons, and I had an injury, and they said, you should get out. You really shouldn't stay in. But the problem with that was I was kind of leaning towards staying in, and I didn't really have much else going on, right? Which I think happens to a lot of people. Maybe they kind of imagine switching careers, right? I mean, a lot of people, I think, even if they switch companies, they stay, whether they're in finance, whether they're whatever they're in, sort of stay in that sort of area. So getting out of the military is a big change. So, but like I just said, I think part of my personality was I didn't necessarily want to be under the thumb of someone, which is kind of an entrepreneur, I think, which is really what real estate investing is. Whether you own a restaurant or you're a real estate investor, all these different things, really, they're entrepreneurial. So I think that was just part of the personality that I had, that I said, okay, I want to be a little bit more free with my choices. Plus, I kind of had this injury, so it doesn't seem like another 16 years of the Marines is going to be really conducive to any sort of like longevity. So I got out, I went to Drexel and studied accounting and data analytics, which gave me more of a background to become a real estate investor, because now I knew accounting and tax and how to value properties and stuff like that, and also how to use the internet pretty well, which was actually handy for marketing and finding deals and all kinds of things like that. But I still didn't know that I was going to do this until I read a book. So I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think over half of the people that invest in real estate that I've heard have read that book.
I've read that book.
Yeah, a lot of people have read that book. A lot of entrepreneurs have read that book. And it's sort of a mindset change. And it kind of spoke to me on everything that I was thinking, but couldn't kind of put my finger on, And then that was like the light bulb went on. And then plus, the military, the big other thing to take from that is, well, when the rug kind of gets pulled out from under you, what do you do? And that was the attraction of real estate investing, because it doesn't matter if the rug gets pulled out if you own property and you're a landlord. I prefer the term real estate investor. And once the rug gets pulled out, it really doesn't matter because you already own the building. So if a company goes under and you lose your job, your income stops. But if you're a real estate investor, the income doesn't stop because people always need a place to live. So that really spoke to me, and that was kind of the start of doing it. Actually, that was sort of how I got the vision, but actually executing was a totally different sort of adventure.
We're going to talk about execution because I think that's important, because people want to get into what you're doing, but they have no clue as to how to start, what to do, and the steps they need to take. So, that's why we're talking to you today. The market's hot right now, right? So, what's going on? What do you see here? What's happening?
So, I think that's a good place to start, because real estate investing is kind of something that is done locally for the most part. So real estate markets are local. The real estate market in New York City is going to be different than Scranton, is going to be different than Philadelphia, is going to be different than the Midwest. But there's one thing that is always constant, and that there's going to be certain factors across the entire United States that happen. And that's kind of what you're talking about right now. So in Scranton and everywhere probably but New York City and maybe a few other major cities that had some pretty big hits from the coronavirus.
And rioting.
And rioting, yeah, obviously.
Or if you want to call it protest.
Peaceful protesting.
Yes, yeah. So there's been a lot of upheaval, and there's been a lot of job loss. Mm-hmm. But you all know this, there's been, I think, an 8% year-over-year increase in home values. So that's sort of the result. The result is we have an increase year-over-year in home prices. We have low inventory, and it's a seller's market. So for anyone listening, I think any real estate professional right now would pretty much agree with that. The reasons why I think it's happening is kind of the opposite of what you're going to hear in the mainstream media, and it's the opposite of what you're going to hear from economists for the most part. And I think the reason for that is a lot of economists basically don't want to bite the hand that feeds. They're employed by government entities. So if they go against that, whether they think it or not, it's basically going against your employer. So I think that there's sort of conflicted information out there as far as the motivations of people. So, for instance, right now, the reason that I think we're seeing, or I basically know that we're seeing this increase in home values, is interest rates. So this might seem a little boring to the listeners. This is kind of like, call it eating your real estate vegetables, if you will. So the interest rates that we have in the country, you have to realize where they come from. This is a really important distinction. Interest rates are set by the government, okay? So, for instance, if you've got an interest rate that you expect to get from a stock, it's all anchored from what the government sets as the risk-free rate, okay? So, the problem with that, though, is it's counterintuitive. So, just to think of ourselves individually, if I'm a person with a 500 credit score and Jackie is a person with a 700 credit score, and we both go get a car, right? If I get approved with my 500 credit score, what am I going to expect? I'm going to expect to pay a much higher interest rate. And the reason is simple, and we all know this, whether we say it out loud or not, is because I'm riskier, right? And that's fair for the person to charge me more interest, because if they make loans to a dozen people with 500 credit scores, one or two might default. If they make 50 loans to people with a 700 credit score, maybe one default. So obviously they need to charge more interest to make up for the bad debt for the people that don't pay. So that's what should happen. What has happened is we had tremendous loss of jobs, GDP contracted, right? What did we do? We lowered the interest rate. That's absolutely insane. So we have more risk in the market through job loss, through possible credit default, but we have lower interest rates. That doesn't make any sense, right? So that's really as far as you need to go to say, first of all, what's the future going to look like, and why is what's happening now happening? Well, there's a glut of refinances happening, right? Because people see there's lower interest rates and they're getting all kinds of marketing from banks and things like that to refinance their loans. So they go and they refinance. So the next issue is you can only refinance to a certain point. So if you look at interest rates over the last 100 years, and then you look at them over the last 30 years, you're going to see kind of a different graph. Basically, over the last 30 years, they've been slowly declining. So you're kind of seeing this almost linear sort of decrease over the last 30 years, right? So what's the issue with that? It's expanded the prices of real estate. So to kind of back up, because maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense or sounds a little esoteric or something, the idea is kind of this. When we hear things, we hear what's the interest rate? And the other thing that we hear in the news all the time is we hear inflation, right? And we hear, maybe you've heard the consumer price index. So the government basically reports on what's the inflation rate. But the problem with that is inflation isn't what they're telling you that it is. They're telling you it's an increase in prices, right? And this is real. So you can watch this. And the government will come out and they'll say, yes, consumer prices every year go up about 2%. And everybody knows that there's some increase in grocery prices and things like that. But the problem with that is it's only counting certain things. So they're saying that there's only like a 2% increase in things, but it's things like toothpaste and consumer prices at the grocery store, right? And the government's reporting on that. So I said before, the government's setting the interest rate. And then the government is also reporting on the increases in prices. It's like the mafia reporting on crime, okay? So that's the big issue there, that you're getting all this convoluted information that isn't true. Here's the reality of things. Over the last 30 years, interest rates have come down, and they've said that prices haven't really gone up. Well, maybe they haven't gone up tremendously at the grocery store, but how have vehicle prices and house prices been? Have they gone up? Tremendously across the board. And most people, whether they consciously know this or not, as far as what's caused it, everybody listening to this knows, oh, I don't understand why trucks are so expensive. I have a lot of friends that buy trucks. And now they're all buying old used trucks because they can't afford these new trucks. And they keep saying, I can't believe the truck prices. But then you listen to the news and it says, oh, well, we haven't had price increases. We haven't had inflation. Well, vehicle prices have gone up. Home prices have gone up. Stocks have gone through the roof, which is a whole other story. And we're sticking to real estate. But that's another place where we've seen price increases. Okay? So the idea is simply this. We've had tremendous asset inflation driven by lowering the interest rate. So whether that makes sense or not, it's just the idea that people should take out of this is a higher or a lower interest rate is not necessarily a good thing. Here's the sort of the end of it is we can't lower interest rates anymore, right? They're basically maxed out. So you can't get this artificial growth from lowering interest rates. So I know I've been talking for a little while. Is that making sense?
Right. And I think, but most people, I don't think they think about any of that. I think what they think, consumer-wise, whether they're buying that truck or a house, is what is my payment?
Exactly. So I'm glad you said that.
What can I afford? And the affordability has increased because of the lower interest rates.
Exactly.
Okay.
So glad you said that. So I already took a look at this before I came here. And here's something that people, I think, that should resonate, right? So like Jackie just said, what's the payment? Which is something that everybody sort of thinks about. So as the interest rate goes down, I keep saying the price goes up. Whether that makes sense or not, this should make sense. When you go get a car loan or a house loan, you say, how much is it going to cost me? Which is what you're saying. So if the house is $200,000 or $300,000, you might get sticker shock, but you'll still buy the $300,000 house if the payment is $800 and you can afford $800. So that's what this whole thing is. This is the consequence of it. We lowered the interest rate, so the payments went down, is basically what happens. To illustrate that, I was taking a look at interest rates and then what the price of something is, just to put it in really plain, easy, digestible language. So right now, if you sell your house for $100,000 or you buy a house for $100,000, whichever end of the transaction you're on, and you have a 5% interest rate, the payment's going to be about $537 a month. Using a 5% interest rate over a 30-year loan, okay? So you got a $100,000 house, and it's $537 payment. If the interest rates go from 5% to 10%, that payment goes from $537 to $878. So the idea would be if in 5 years, right, the interest rates go up, my $100,000 house, instead of costing me $537, now costs me over $800 a month, almost $900. The next thing that you would really have to think about is, if I'm buying a house today for $100,000, right, what's going to happen in 5 years if interest rates go up? So let's say we're all buying a house right now, and we're buying them at a 5% interest rate, and then in 5 years, this goes up. Well, what's the consequence of that? And the consequence is that the price goes down because people can only afford a certain payment, like Jackie said. So that $537 payment that I could afford now, in 5 years, if interest rates go up, that drops the home value from $100,000 to just over $61,000.
Most people aren't thinking about that.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
I mean, that's a great illustration, and I don't think that.
Is it clear? Because I look at this stuff all the time, so I want it to be.
To me, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel so. I feel like it is, and so in terms of a house, a residential home that somebody wants to live in, and there's been a debate raging all over.
Sure.
Is a home an investment? Do you consider a home an investment?
I consider a home an investment if you don't live in it.
Right.
Because it's a simple definition, and this is probably from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or just a lot of other books, but an asset is something that pays you. A liability is something that you pay. So a house is a liability because you pay it. You pay the mortgage, you pay when things break, you put a new roof on it, you pay the insurance, you pay the taxes. That's a liability.
Right. Okay, good. Well, there's an argument that a home is the best investment that someone can make. Right? I mean, you've heard it.
Yeah.
I've heard it in my business.
Yeah, right. I'd rather pay a mortgage than pay rent. I mean, at least I'm building something.
And that kind of goes back to, I would agree with that almost universally, if this whole federal interest rate thing hadn't been happening. Because the big problem is now is like we can't increase the value of homes by lowering the interest rate because it can't get any lower. So what makes prices go up?
Demand.
Exactly. So demand is going to raise prices if supply stays finite, which it has, right? We don't see new houses being built because it's too expensive. So I think the average price or the average cost to build a house over $300,000 across the U.S., right? It's probably more expensive depending on where you're in, but as an average, is over $300,000. Well, people aren't building that many houses in this area because it's hard to sell houses for that much because the jobs and the wages don't support it, right? It's more of a blue-collar area. This isn't New York City. So thinking about that, the only other way that houses go up in value is going to be outside of interest rates, is going to be if high-quality jobs come in and wages go up.
Okay, so let's talk about our area in that sense. So I'm not seeing that happening.
Exactly. So since that's not happening, and I can't really prognosticate on what the future of the Scranton economy looks like, but what we can say is that likely history is going to be the best predictor of the future. So is there going to be some crazy increase in wages? Probably not. I mean, the only thing that I guess we could talk about or we could all think about is, did all the people working from home, will that have an impact? And there's been articles out there that say, yes, it will, right? That people working from home, and we live near highly populated, high-taxed areas that incentivize people to leave, like New Jersey and New York. So with those areas being close by, we could see an influx of people, right? Which could push up prices. But let's just consider, all things being equal, prices in this area shouldn't really increase. And largely they don't. I mean, for the most part, this is a high cash flow area. It's not a big appreciation, home value appreciation area. So what that means is that if the homes aren't generally increasing and the interest rate thing is kind of gone because we can't lower it anymore, if you're buying a house right now, and Jackie, you and I talked about this, so this is really important to, I think, the listeners. If you're buying a house right now and there's 5 bidders and they're bidding up the price, and you feel defeated because you can't pay that price, you're probably better off. If you can't pay the price and people are bidding it up, maybe you shouldn't be buying that house because maybe the value isn't there, right? This happened in 2006, 2007, and we're seeing similar things like that, right? Where there's very little inventory out there, prices are very high, and the people are paying more than that. So
we just had two properties this past week where there was 10 bids.
Yeah, and I think that's over. I know the property she's talking about, and I think it's overpriced. I really think it's
10 offers.
10 offers. And I thought the list price was high, and it's going way over that.
And then another one.
I just don't see the value.
And another one is not. It's a 2-unit. So that one has 4 bids. Mm-hmm. So it's happening out there. It's real.
Yeah, right. What are they, like you say? What are they going to do in 2 years or 3 years when, things settle down and like the bubble pops?
But see, here's the message that may be lost without me saying it. If you want to sell, if you're thinking of selling, what do you say, Kyle?
Yeah. Sell.
Now
is the time.
So here's exactly what you just said. Everybody sits around and says, "Well, I'll just hold the house because the price will go up."
Nope.
And I'm saying, saying that I don't think that we can get the prices to go up. Yeah. So I think that if you should be careful with this because you have to define the person and their goals. If somebody is in their 20s, 30s, and wants to live in a home for 30 or 40 years,
well, then don't.
Then maybe don't sell it. But if you have any inkling, and I talk to a lot of people like this. The baby boomer generation is getting into their late 50s and they're in their 60s. lot of people want to retire. And I talk to people all the time with deals that we generate off market. And they say, oh, I'll just hold it longer. It'll be worth more. We're going to retire in 2 years.
Really? I got a friend of mine who's in that exact boat, and he listens all the time. And I'm not going to mention his name, but he's got a beautiful house in Dunmore. And I said, let's call him Joe. I said, Joe, if you sell your house, you're going to get a good price. But if you're going to buy something else, I says, you're going to pay top dollar. He said, Pat, he says, that's not what I'm doing. He says, I'm going to sell this and I'm going to rent. And I was like, wow, you're smarter than the average bear, aren't you? So until he decides where he wants to go, because his life situation is changing, right? Yeah. You said with the boomers and all of that. So that's what he's going to do. And I think it's very wise.
Yeah. And that's a lot of people I talk to. Oh, I'm trying to retire and move, and I'll value the property based on, what I can actually pay for the property. And if it's not good for someone, we always say, well, absolutely, here's a realtor, and you should speak to them, and I'll connect you with them. And I know the people that'll sell it for you, pretty efficiently. But people say, well, no, I think I'll wait a few years. Ugh. And that's the thing. Like, they're thinking about retiring. And to you, I would say, if you're retiring in 5 to 10 years, retiring, moving, anything like that, you should probably sell now, because I just don't see how prices are going to go any higher.
My dad's house in the Rockaways in Breezy Point, about 10, 15 years ago, a guy says it's worth $1 million. It's a beautiful house on the beach.
Yeah.
Sandy came through, decimated everything, and that $1 million house is now worth half of what it was going to be at that time. So things can change. And like you say, looking down the road, you never know. There's a lot of unforeseens that could happen and affect values. So,
but now it's more valuable, I think, because it's a gated community. Right. It's still New York City, right? You don't think it. You have to pinch yourself when you're there, because it's beautiful. It's a beach and a bay. But those values are going to skyrocket, mark my words, because everybody's fleeing Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx.
Oh, Manhattan. If you own something in Manhattan, boy, you're taking the shaft. You're really going down a long mine.
But we have to go to a break. Before we go, Pat, would you like to review a listing, please?
Yes. We have a stunning 4-bedroom, 4-bath home. It's at 501 Gardner Road in Roaring Brook Township for $595,000. This home is gorgeous. I'm going to describe it, but I can't really. You have to go to jruddy.com and look at the pictures. It's a custom-built home. It's only 12 years old. It was built by Coaches Brothers. 5 of the rooms have views of the mountains. It's got geothermal heating and cooling. It's got an 1,100 square foot 3-car garage. I want it. Because the rear of the property is on the 18th hole of the Elmhurst Country Club. It's a very private setting. It's on almost 2 acres of land. It's very close to the interstates, and it's in the top-ranked North Pocono School District. It has amazing landscaping. You really got to picture this. It's got 2 waterfalls in the front, the pond waterfalls with a 30-foot little stream connecting them. The kitchen is gorgeous. It's open with gorgeous granite countertops. It's got 2 islands, window seats, professional appliances, central AC, 2 patios. This house is just, it's like something you see on TV. So that's a fabulous 4-bedroom, 4-bath, estate-like home at 501 Gardner Road in Roaring Brook Township for $595,000. That's listed by Connie Seagraves of our office.
Stay with the Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21, Jack Ruddy Real Estate on 94.3 FM The Talk. We'll be right back.
The talented team of professionals at Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate. They're not just real estate agents, they're agents of change. They're on a never-ending quest for the best for you and your family. They can help you find precisely what you want at this time in your life. A computer, a website, an app, and a listing by itself can't do that. They're obsessed with better and deliver extraordinary, embracing the what if, not just the what's been done before, with a level of accountability and honesty not found anywhere else in the real estate industry. Don't settle for average, okay, or just all right. This change in your life is monumental, and there's only one Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate that will help you rock that change. Call 570-344-6724 and visit jruddy.com, JRUDDY.com. Each Century 21 office is independently owned and operated.
We're back. back with more Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate. I'm Jackie Ruddy, broker, and with Pat Devaney, my husband, fellow realtor.
And we're back.
And we're back with Kyle Thomas, local real estate investor, talking about interest rates, that the market here is hot, low interest rate, what's going on. You have a sense and a pulse of the market. You've researched it for a long time, painstakingly, I might add. Put a lot of effort and time into investing and really knowing when to act and what to do and looking at the outlook here. So before the break, we were talking about this is probably, if someone's thinking about selling, the best time. Like, hit it now. Sell. If you're thinking about it, you know you're going to eventually do it. Maybe now is the perfect time. Because in the future, no one knows, right? We don't have a crystal ball, but there are some indicators out there. What do you see happening from here?
So what I see happening is that we're going to have problems as far as on the buyer side. So we said it's a seller's market. Houses are being priced up. There's a bunch of bidders on one house. But if we look outside of just local real estate, residential real estate, where people live in their houses, we all know that restaurants are closing down, hotels are closing down, and other businesses, small businesses are closing down, and even big businesses. Look at the mall and things like that, where we're having, I think, which places have recently declared bankruptcy. I know like Pier 1 was one my wife was talking about, and I think maybe Macy's. I know there's a lot of them. So what does that matter? Well, it simply matters that banks give out loans, not just to people that buy houses. They also give loans out to the local pizza shop. They give it out to the department store. They give it out to the hotels. So when the hotels, the pizza shop, and department stores stop paying their loans and we have foreclosures, even though they've kind of kicked the can down the road lately with all this federal stimulus money, when those foreclosures start, the banks aren't going to be receiving money. So when the banks stop receiving 20, 30, 40% of the loans that they have outstanding, how are they going to give out new loans? Really, that's the problem, right? Banks aren't going to be able to give out loans. And it could be as soon as a few months from now, 6 months from now, or a year from now. I don't even know how we continue to kick the can this far down the road.
Yeah, they've been putting foreclosures off. It only so far before it comes back and it bites you.
Okay, so I have a real life situation. I have a seller that really, I was sitting at the kitchen table not too long ago, that really was concerned about the value of their home. And they really felt that the exodus from the major cities, the buyers that are coming to our area, et cetera, would drive up the price by 40%. And so they were very concerned that, sometime down the road, maybe a year or so, that they would look back and regret selling the home now because they could have held out for more. What do you say to someone like that?
I say to someone like that, once again, it depends on your personal situation, right? So if I'm a real estate investor and I know that I'm going to make a 50% return by selling something, I'm going to sell it. I might make 80%. I mean, how upset can I be if I made 50% versus 80%, right? So along those lines, if your potential seller is concerned, can they withstand, if I'm right, to lose money or for the value of the house to go down? So right now, if they were going to make 50% and next year they're going to make 10%, are they okay with that? So it depends on what they're trying to do. If they don't care as much about losing as they do about winning, then they could speculate and hold it. Maybe it'll go up. But if they care more about making that money because they need it for retirement or something like that, well, go ahead and make the 50% return now and don't worry about 80% down the road because you're taking a gigantic risk.
Or a huge risk because we don't know where this is going. And a lot of the data I have say that the market's going to continue for years to come.
They said this in 2007.
Right.
Yeah, they said the same thing.
So who knows? But there's a lot of information out there that I think is...
Yeah, the banking industry having problems and the low interest rates not inflating values. There's nothing else that we can really do at this point besides see issues, If they open the whole country and all the businesses started running again, it's not how it works, right? You can't shut down revenue for 6 months and then say, oh, okay, just kidding, you can go ahead and open now because they're already so far behind on bills, they'll never catch up. Or they're going to have to double their prices and people aren't going to pay.
Kyle Thomas, will you come back next week?
Yes.
Please. Thank you. Thanks for joining the Real Estate Roundtable with Century 21 Jack Ruddy Real Estate on 94.3 FM. The Talker. Remember to tune in next Saturday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 11:30 a.m.